Joining me now here on the Godzilla of Truth is Scott Taylor. Scott, Republican, former congressman, former House of Delegates member in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Scott throwing his hat in the ring. He is running for U.S. Senate for the Republican nomination to go up against Mark Warner in 2020. Trump will be on the ballot. And I think that Scott Taylor is Mark Warner's worst nightmare. Former Navy SEAL, has foreign policy experience, very vigorous campaigner, can raise money. And I think he's going to do very well in Hampton Roads, very well in Southwest Virginia. I don't think he's going to get crushed in Northern Virginia like everybody else does. And I think he's got a heck of a shot to win. But first, he's got to be the nominee. He's already got one opponent, I believe, if memory serves me. Could be others that come in, but he's the favorite. Hey, Scott Taylor, good to have you with us.
John, great to be with you and your listeners. I love that intro, Big John. That's pretty hilarious.
You like that? We figured we'd get you fired up with that. We couldn't find the Big Scott one. Of course, it does, which we'll try to find that later. Maybe they'll write a song about you. But
you were the Godzilla, John. I'm just in the shadow.
Oh, well, thank you.
On the show.
Thank you. Look, I love your campaign for Senate. I'm really excited. I got to just be honest here. It's not often I get excited about a candidate getting in a race. It's like, okay, what candidates, what are we going to talk about? But I'm really excited about you getting in this race. And look, I like Mark Warner. I consider him a friend. He's a really good guy and he's really smart. But when Mark and I voted for him. Everybody knows that. I voted and endorsed Warner over Ed in, when was that, 2014?
14.
Yeah, 14. Because I didn't like Ed's campaign. I didn't think Ed stood for anything, and I thought it was critical that we had Mark Warner representing Virginia on the Senate Intel Committee. But here's what happened. Somewhere along the way, the way your potential opponent has lost his way. I mean, he's now gone so liberal and so left. I don't even recognize the Mark Warner that was governor here. And so I think he's out of step with Virginians outside of maybe that Northern Virginia corridor. How do you see this race?
I think, your points are very well taken. Look, I like Mark Warner personally, too. I don't have any personal issues with Mark, and I think as a governor, he was bipartisan, and he used his business experience to help Virginia businesses as governor. But those days are over, and it's very interesting. Two things. Hey, when I was on the mainstream media not too long ago on MSNBC, and they were like, "Well, why do you think he's gone to the left?" I'm like, "Look, it's not me what I think. Just look at his votes." Like when you look at, Mark Warner will tell you he's a business person, and when you look at his votes for whether it's the chamber or small business, NFIB, or just manufacturers, those scores are horrible now. And in the early 2009 and 2010, I think it was, they were good. So, there's a verifiable left creep with Mark. And then when you mentioned the Intel Committee, look, this is a serious guy. Like, he's not somebody who just a blowhard, right? Or he hasn't been. So everyone took him serious when he's the ranking member of the Intel Committee, and he's saying, hey, there's overwhelming evidence of collusion with this president, which is criminal and traitorous, right? He's on TV saying that constantly over the past 2 years. But we now know it was BS. And what's interesting, there's this New York Times story, and I'm going to keep repeating it because it's a fantastic quote. And the New York Times, because they took him serious too, they think he had something, had the goods on the president because what he said, and he's privy to information that we're not. And as a former Navy SEAL and combat vet, I think it's atrocious politicizing Intel. You don't politicize Intel. Intel is there so you can analyze it and have concrete information from it so that you can act because people's lives are on the line potentially. So he goes on there and he's presenting this as though the president is 100% guilty and he's privy to this information. So the New York Times does a story and they're like, well, this is a stand, and this is 2 years ago. They say, well, this is a stand and show moment for Mark Warner. This is his moment. He's slogged through the Senate with few significant achievements. And that's a fantastic quote. But it's true. 12 years, man. Name me 3 things that Mark Warner has done. You can't. And he can't either. Right. So I just, I like him personally. But, there's a reason why I support term limits. And I do think, and more to what you said, I've had calls from people who are soft Republican, business people who supported Mark Warner Well, they're unhappy. They like him personally, but they're unhappy with him too. I got calls from people from the tech sector of Northern Virginia, which is sort of Mark Warner area.
Yes.
Same thing. Like we don't like his tech policies. We don't like where he's gone with business votes, and we don't like what he did on the Intel committee. So we're supporting you now. So the campaign's going fantastic, and we're getting calls, and every day we get people from all around the state, from the Commonwealth, asking to volunteer and to help out and to fundraise.
Well, I think you had a heck of a shot. And the point, Scott Taylor, that you bring up about Mark Warner taking him seriously as ranking Intel member, I did. I mean, I took him very seriously. And, when he kept going on TV and saying, there's smoke, there's fire, and I've got evidence, and I've got this, and I've got that, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, if you understand how this works, as the ranking member of the Senate Intel Committee, he is getting information that very few people in the United States get. Very few. That's a very restricted list. And
that's right. He's talking to Virginians and Americans, saying, "Hey, this president's essentially a traitor."
Yes.
And it was BS. And that is coming from a serious person who count on him, who listened to his words, who believe what he says.
Right.
And I think it was it's a breach of the trust of Virginians and Americans.
You know what? I agree 100%. I mean, he's really going to have to answer for that. It's very disappointing. And even when Richard Burr, and when he and the majority, the Senate Intel chairman, the Republican from North Carolina, Richard Burr, who I take seriously too, when they would come out together and do the joint statement, I mean, it was very effective. But then, remember, Richard Burr abandoned the whole thing. He said, I've been doing this 18 months. I've read through thousands and thousands of hours of testimony. I've sat here. There's nothing here. I'm done. I'm canceling it. I'm done with the investigation. There's nothing there. The president, there is no collusion. I have no evidence of it. We're done. And then Warner comes on the TV and says, well, I have alternative facts. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? Your chairman just abandoned it, who for 18 months you went up there with him as a true bipartisan professional. And when your chairman said, after 18 months, I have nothing, we're done, there's no evidence of any collusion at all, then you say, well, I have facts that he doesn't have, and it should continue on. Right there, you knew he was doubling down on a totally empty hand. And I think the senators got to answer for that in this campaign.
The gross politicizing of the intelligence of this country is dangerous. It's very dangerous. That is the committee that should not be partisan. They should be analyzing intel. They shouldn't, like Adam Schiff, be leaking everything and going to the press every single chance he can with innuendo and exactly what Mark Warner did. He did the same as Adam Schiff. He just wasn't as much as as a nasty guy. But it's dangerous. It's very dangerous for this country and for the men and women that put their lives on the line every single day when you're politicizing intelligence. And I think that we have over 800,000 military and veterans in this Commonwealth. They understand that intuitively because they deal with it. They've dealt with it on a daily basis sometime in their lives. And I think it's very disappointing to them and to other Virginians around the Commonwealth.
John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. I'm your Godzilla of the truth. We're with former House of Delegates member, former member of Congress, former Navy SEAL Scott Taylor. Scott is running for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate for the opportunity to run against Mark Warner in 2020. His primary will be decided in June of 2020, so it's a little bit of ways off, but he's starting early and getting out there, and I like it. I like the fact you're out there early. Scott, look, the president getting a lot of criticism from conservatives about this budget he's negotiating, this 2-year increase in the national debt by $400 billion. I'm in favor of it, and I just told Sean Spicer why. I know I got your text earlier. I think it was a good deal. Look, do I want to raise the debt? No. But $400 billion when you got a $21 trillion debt right now, to me, is not earth-shattering. What is earth-shattering is if you don't do this and you have another government shutdown, all the Democrats are going to win Virginia. It's going to hurt our chances to get resources we need for the Virginia Trump campaign in 2020. And if you give the caucuses to the Democrats in Virginia, Scott, I've been saying this, Kirk Cox is like the firewall. He's the last man standing. They'll have it for a generation because if you have a government shutdown, no Republicans in any swing district are going to win. The Democrats are going to win them all, just like they always do. They're going to win them all in the face of a shutdown. It's a disaster. Kirk Cox is gone. And then there's no ability for Republicans in Virginia to raise any money. And it's over for a long time. What say you?
Well, we're already having a problem raising money, which is why we need a Republican at one of those top 5 spots or all of them, it's statewide. So, and Kirk Cox, they redid his district. It's a little tougher for him. He's working his butt off. He's raising money. I'm going to go door knock for Kirk Cox because I know how important it is. I know that he believes in door knocking, as do I. But so I think what you guys are talking about, and I've been in the belly of the beast, right? Not only was I up in Congress, but I was on appropriations where it's spending. And look, I love my colleagues, and a lot of people, just like me, are fiscally conservative, and we want to reduce the trajectory of government spending. There's no question about that. I think perhaps some of the disagreement amongst us is how do you do that, right? I'm someone who I like to get things done. I like to be practical. So you've got to have a seat at the table to actually change the trajectory of spending. In my opinion, you've got to get in there and be able to do it. And on appropriations, we kicked back, thousands of requests for more spending, right? We have to vote on spending bills, which of course we were like, oh, you're voting on spending. But we were probably the most conservative committee, really, because there's thousands of requests for spending, some of which from people who say they want to cut spending, and we cut those things. So what the president's doing here from a political strategy, I think is smart, and this is why. What's the alternative right now? So yes, we want to cut spending, but what's the plan to do so, and how do you do that right now? What you can do right now is ensure that the Democrats don't use a shutdown to not just hurt Virginia, but hurt America and hurt Republicans for their election. And then come together as a team to say, all right, we're going to, like what Sean came up with some good ideas, of course, when he was talking about a comprehensive plan, out-of-date programs, things that are not modernized, which is true. And the government is huge. So one person, it's very difficult for them to look at all the programs and say, this is what we should cut this. And it's also, you have to also be realistic, right? You can't just say, okay, I'm just going to cut this whole department. Yes, would we like to do that? Sure. But really, is that really going to happen? No. So I agree with him. And this is poli-sci 101 when you say, all right, if you have 40 Republicans, for example, who are not willing to vote on any spending bill, what does that do to a spending bill? Especially when the fundamental duty of Congress is to fund the government, right? All that does is move the bill to the left because you have to get Democrat votes to fund the government, which what does that do? Increase the spending.
Right.
But if you had everybody that was willing to actually vote for a spending bill and actually get in there with what Sean's ideas in terms of comprehensive plan and then what programs are outdated, but they're ready to hold the line. So you have these 40 Republican votes there. Guess what that does to the bill? It holds the line and changes the trajectory. So I agree with my colleagues about cutting spending. I do think the president's strategy is actually smart because it's going to hurt us tremendously politically. And I do think I'm someone who thinks that we have to all have a seat at the table to be able to actually change the trajectory of government spending. Because just talking about it on TV ain't doing it. You gotta actually get in there and do the work. Right. Which is what I like to do.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And what you just said about the 40 Republicans that won't vote for a spending bill because they don't want to raise the debt or they just want to spend any money, it's very counterproductive because you're exactly right. I haven't really thought about it in those terms, but it just moves everything the other way because then you need 37 Democratic votes or whatever in order to get it passed. And so you just play right into their hands. So it's really stupid.
Exactly.
And I mean,
it's funny. A lot of people don't realize that's the case. I mean, and what you just said, like, oh, I haven't thought about it like that. I hear that all the time. But the reality is if you want to hold the line on spending and reduce it, you got to be willing to get in there because that's where your power is, right? Your power is your vote. So if you're never willing to vote for it, what's the incentive for anybody on the left or who wants to do more spending to hold the line? There is none because they're like, well, you're not going to vote for it anyway. We have the votes. They have to negotiate with us, which means more spending. So, that's my view of it. Is you got to get in there and you got to be practical and you got to hold the line.
All right, Scott Taylor, we're out of time. Thanks for being with us. Scott Taylor running for U.S. Senate. Scott, people want more info on your campaign or they want to volunteer. Where do they go?
TaylorForSenate.com, TaylorForSenate.com. Text 41411 text Taylor to that number. We'd love to have you. I'm ready, man. I'm pumped. I'm psyched. We're going to have a great campaign.
All right. Well, we can feel your enthusiasm through the line. I know we have a bad connection here, but go to Scott. Go to TaylorForSenate.com, TaylorForSenate.com, and he'll get you hooked in there. Scott, thanks for being with us.
John, always a pleasure. Thank you.